right, so today we are going to be doing a migration of a configuration from Halyard into, we're going to go configuration from Halyard into open source Spinnaker Operator. So my name is Chris Gruel. I'm one of the solutions architects at Armory. My Twitter handle is devorbitus. And let's get started. So this is the most important piece that we're going to talk about right here. This is a repo that Armory put out there called Spinnaker Customized Patches. And why this is great is because we're going to take a look at this, and when you see how these patches come to be, right, and how we're going to use them to take what we have in our Halyard configuration. In our case, I just pulled it straight from a VM that had Halyard installed, and I just pulled all the files out of the .hal directory, and I'm basically accessing them in another directory so that we can pull out the useful information out of there. So now let's go ahead and take a look. So we're going to start, and I'm going to do this straight from starting with nothing. So we're going to go.armory.io/customize. And notice customize is spelled with a K because that's how the customize works. So when we do that, we get redirected to github.com/armory/spinnaker-customize-patches. Now, if we take a look at this repo here, we see that this is a template repo, okay? Now, what that means is we're going to actually take this repo and turn it into a repo that we are going to use in our location. But let's just take a little tour of this repo right quick, right? So let's look in here, and we see stuff like we can configure it with a single file. We've got a cluster deployment. None of this really means anything because we're going to go from the perspective of we've never installed Operator, right? But let's assume we want something like cluster, and let's assume we want, I don't know, some other fancy stuff, okay? All that's great, but the directions in here are pretty self-explanatory. This is the key for us right now, at least for today. We're going to have this spin flavor OSS. And what that's going to do is this deploy script is going to know, oh, I need to install the open source operator, not the Armory operator. So we're going to take that and we're going to use that, right? And so let's see, we've got a link to the customization.yaml file. But it looks like, yeah, so it's a symlink to the customization.yaml file that's inside this recipes directory. Okay, so if we look inside this recipes directory, we see the customization.yaml file. You can't see it yet, but it does map to this minimum one. So we're going to use that in a minute because that has, if you're not familiar with customize, it's like saying, yeah, I want to do these individual resources, and then I want to use a patch strategy merge. So each of these will be patched into the files, right? These resources where they fit appropriately based on the hierarchy of the YAML. So that is like a super simplistic way of describing what customization does, but I promise it is so powerful. We really, really, really like this. And it is much more powerful than something like trying to create, you know, a Helm chart for every possible conceivable option, because there are so many different ways of doing things in Spinnaker. So if I come in here and let's look at stuff like the core config, right? Where we've got a simple little patch for setting the time zone. We've got a simple little patch for setting the version number, right? We've got, if we go into something like persistence, we can see that, you know, if we're using Google Cloud Storage, we can set it up through there. If we want it through Redis, an external Redis, we can set it up through there. So all of these files are templates. They're like saying, hey, you know what? I want to use these, but because we're going to create a template, we'll be able to like use them, but change them for our own information. So let's start on that process. So let's go ahead and we're going to say, use this template. Now, I've got to do a little something extra special in here. That's fine. All right, cool. So what are we going to call it? Let's call it Spinnaker Customized Patches. Good enough for our purpose. Let's keep it public. Why not? Do I want to copy all branches? Nah, I don't really need to. So create repository from template. All right. So now it's going to generate the repository. This only takes a few moments. All right. And there we are. So now we have our own repo. And this is good because we're going to be setting up our Spinnaker to this repo. So let's go ahead and pull that down. Let's come over here. And we're going to paste this in. We're going to say git clone, pulling it down, change directory skp, and here we are. Now, some people like to work out of the terminal. I'm not one of them. However, the terminal does have its uses quite often. In our case, what we can see right here, we can see that that customization.yaml file is being symlinked to recipes/customization-minimum. All right, that's good to know. So now let's take a look at, so there's that customization file. We see that it's symlinked. Let's take a look at that customization.minimum file. Now we showed it a little bit over there. We see it's a Spinnaker service, right? This Spinnaker service right here, this is the base of the single kind for this Kubernetes operator, right? And Spinnaker operator is going to read the values that are out of this file, and it's going to say, okay, I know how to use this to create a Spinnaker deployment, right? And so the other things that we need in there, we can take a look back in that minimum. We see, okay, we've got Minio, we've got SpinSA, right? So what is this? Accounts Kubernetes SpinSA. Accounts Kubernetes SpinSA. This is a role binding, right? This is a cluster role binding and a Spinnaker service account that's being created. So all these things will be added to the deployment for Kustomize to do. Now, in our case, we could do just this Minio. We can see where it's doing a patch on the Minio. So this is coming from persistence, patch Minio. So the idea with this particular minimum file is to say, okay, we're going to, if I look at this patch Minio here, you can see we've got a Minio access key that we're getting a secret from, right? The rest of this stuff is all, you know, this is just the access key ID is Minio, and then the secret is in there, path style, and then the Minio endpoint. So the idea with this particular file, the one that's this customization Minio, or minimum, I mean, is that it has everything it needs right out of the box to start up a brand new Spinnaker, like a full-fledged Spinnaker. And if I look at this patch cube over here, which is in accounts, Kubernetes patch cube, I see this is adding parts, validator, providers, Kubernetes, enable, true. And it's saying, okay, this is going to create a primary account of Spinnaker. So this part right here, we see this Spinnaker config and then config. This is all stuff that we've seen before. Like this part right here looks very similar. So now if I open this up and I take a look at something like this config file, right? This is my how config. And if I tell it that I'm talking about a YAML file, it makes it a little bit easier to read. We see here's my how config. And what do I have in here? I've got providers. And I've got, if I scroll down, I've got Kubernetes, enabled accounts. Like this is just straight out of my how config. Primary account, all of that. So if I want to say, you know what, let's just set this guy aside. We'll come back to him when we need to. But we see right here that this Spinnaker config is just saying, okay, this is part of the configuration for Spinnaker. And then in here, I'm saying this is the config for that. Again, we're getting a little bit deep in here. It's not quite important for us to get there. But what is important is that the config we're going to use, and we're going to kick that guy off in a second. So let's see. We'll come over here. We're in this directory, right? And what we want is we say, if we look at our README file, right, general use, we make a link from customization.yaml to one of the example customizations in the recipes folder, depending on your use case. Well, in ours, we're okay just as it is, right? We could just do that. We store secret literals in secrets/secrets env and secret files in secrets/files. Okay, so there's a secrets directory in here. Cool. There's secrets. We see there is no secrets env, but that's fine, whatever. All right, okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's see what happens. So I'm already connected to my cluster, so let's just do it. Let's do a deploy. See what happens. Go. Oh, see, already messed it up. Don't want to do that. We didn't want to do that. We want to do what we said before, which is spin flavor OSS, right? I want to keep this OSS. So we're going to do export spin flavor OSS. Cool. Now let's do that deploy, right? Because I want to keep this open source. This is Spinnaker Summit. A lot of people are using open source. Let's keep it open source for now. Okay. So spin flavor OSS. Let's see what happens. I do a deploy. Let's see. It's going to do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And if I want to see what's actually going on, I can actually check in this deploy log over here. But we'll come over here. I'm going to keep this. Don't think I broke it. Unless, maybe I do. I have to keep it. So we're going to go, come on now. Oh, ha, I know exactly what is going on here. So there was a big hurricane that came through. There was a hurricane, well, no longer a hurricane, but it came through, and it created, or it my house, which I've been working out of, has had no internet. So I had to come to another place to do this presentation. But what that means is that my cluster doesn't recognize my IP address because I've got it configured to only go to certain IP addresses. So I wouldn't normally have to do this, but I do today because that was fun. So I'm just going to add 32. And we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll do that. And now if I do get nodes, I should actually get a response. Yay! And that was the problem the whole time. All right. So it was trying to talk to the cluster to like determine what's, if the operator was there and a bunch of other stuff. So let's do the deploy again now that we've got spin flavor OSS and now that the cluster is actually able to talk. So, hey, there we go. Changing Spinnaker. Yep. Do you want to delete it? So yes, I do actually. So now it's going to delete. It's going to pull down operator. It's going to put that into a directory. It's going to install operator into the Spinnaker operator namespace, right? So it pulled down all the manifests from the Armory Spinnaker operator releases, latest downloads, all right? And it's installing operator, and it's waiting for operator to come back up. It'll take a second for the cluster to... So I told myself, whenever I'm waiting, I'll go ahead and check the chat. And don't see anything in there. So if you do have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. And hopefully I'll be able to get them. Come back to it. All right. Back up there. How's this going? Looking pretty good. If I look at workloads, sure there are other reasons. Awesome. Can't find a persistent volume claim. Super great. So, you know what? Fine, we'll do it differently. But honestly, problems like this come up all the time. So, cool. Let's just check it out. So here's SKP. Right? So they all changed because I switched it. So that's something the script did, is it went through and changed the API version. Because we're using open source, it went in there and modified every single file that had a YAML file and looked for API version. It changed it from the API version of the Armory operator to the open source one. So that's good. We wanted that. That's a good thing. Now, I seem to have a problem with persistent volume claims on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm basically gonna shut off that part, because that's what's dying right there. Now, as I'm trying to figure this out, I can come over here and take a look at this deploy log, because this gets set every single time. And if I need more information, I can take a look, right? And I can come and see here any issues, right? So there's a secret file example, there's a secret example. All right, so let's keep working. So the next thing we want to do, let's see, it's not able to do it. And then our problem is persistent volume claim with Minio. Okay, fine. Let's go back into in here and let's just get rid of Minio. We don't actually need it. So let's come in here and let's close this down. But since we don't actually need it right here, and maybe we want to just kind of switch over, right? We'll start our looking and getting our data from the actual config, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Because in my particular case, I've got problems with getting a persistent volume claim. So let's not get a persistent volume claim. Let's get rid of Minio. So what we'll do is we're going to do k delete -k period and say, oh, go away. Right? Cool. So Spinnaker services, Spinnaker no longer found. Awesome. Okay, get PO. Awesome. Nothing in the Spinnaker namespace. Excellent. All right. So let's try this again. Come back over here. And instead, we're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's do the all this time. But we're going to start. The great thing about this all, right, is we can see individual things and just turn them on by commenting them, right? So in our case, let's go ahead. We want to basically simulate what we had in the minimum, but we're gonna create a link. So let's do link recipes, and we want to do all, right? So we're gonna symlink recipes customization all to customization.yaml, and I want to replace it. Yep, cool. So now, when I do a customize from the root of this, it's going to redirect to this customization.all. Awesome. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start turning off stuff because I'm not ready for that yet, right? So patch load balancer, patch Minio, don't want that. I do want this spin SA, and I don't want the Minio. This patch cube, I want to keep that. That we remember that was in our customization Minio, the patch cube. And in our case, when we look at Kubernetes patch cube, we see that it's actually using this service account true, right? Which is the whole reason why spin SA has the cluster role binding on the service account. And if we look at patch cube, we see that it's doing this patch service account, primary service account, but also down here, this is interesting. So we've got service settings section, and it's got cloud driver, and it says Kubernetes service account name spin SA. So we're telling it this is going to add to the service settings of cloud driver. It's going to add this Kubernetes service account spin SA. Awesome. Now over here, validation. I think let's turn off the validation, right? So we're going to just turn that off for now. Cool. Validation, providers, Kubernetes enabled. Awesome. So this would do connectivity checks to configure Kubernetes accounts before applying the manifest. Maybe we do want them. I don't know. Let's keep it off for now. All right. Now let's turn it on. Let's do it. Let's keep it. Let's keep it. I changed my mind. No problem. All right. So we've got patch cube, but what do we absolutely need? Because we got rid of Minio, we have to have some kind of persistence, right? So we want something like this, okay? So let's see, this is it, actually, patch GCS. Cool. So let's come back over here. And we want persistence. It's basically this. Right. And we'll just take this patch. So ordinarily these would be in here, but this one just apparently missed the cut. Okay, fine. So there's our patch GCS. Now, patch GCS says it needs something from our spin secrets, and it needs gcs.json. But if I come over here and I look at that config that we had, which this time we're going to keep. So let's see, what were we getting our config from? Kubernetes, deployment environment, we have sidecars, we have all kinds of stuff. Here it is. Spinnaker GCS account in the .gc. All right, so our .gcp Spinnaker GCS account. So we'll come over here to our secrets, our files. And we're going to take this Spinnaker GCS account. We're going to put it in there in the files directory. Cool. So now we're going to take this, copy this relative path, and we're going to say that, except it's going to be part of a secret. So we don't actually need the full relative path. We just need the name, right? Spinnaker GCS account. Cool. So there's our account. Hey, no memorizing the account now. All right. Spinnaker GCS account. So, but this secret, if I come over here and I do, okay, get secrets, we see a bunch of secrets, but the most important one is not in here, right? So let's go ahead and do it again. So secrets. Awesome. So let's see, do we have any questions while I'm waiting on stuff? Nope. Unless this page isn't refreshing, that's also possible. Don't know. No problem. All right, error deploying, timeout requested not complete when the requested time, see deploy log. So let's take a look at our deploy log. So we're trying to create secrets, encrypted, secret, did it create anything when creating users? Authorization, cluster, let's take a look. Spin secrets. Nope, it did not create it. So, oh, well, let's try. Let's see. So we needed our spin secrets. So it's supposed to pull from spin secrets example, right? Based on our documentation in here, right? It's going to come, it's going to get our secrets from secrets/secrets.env. All right, so let's go ahead and create that. Secrets.env. Now, in here, we've got lots of different, you know what? I can just put them all in here for now. Why not? Because I don't know which one it needs. So let's go with all. Let's go with them all. And let's go ahead and do this again and see if we can get it to create secrets that are necessary. What should happen. All right. Having problems creating our secrets. No problem. All right. It's okay. We may have to get that fixed outside, but that's okay. What we can do is we can do it ourselves, right? Fine. We'll do it the hard way. So we see it's either from file or it's in here. So let's just go ahead and create what we need for ourselves. Right? From file, and it'll be secrets slash, because all we really need is that file to be located, right? and we see where it is. Secrets files, copy relative path. There. Okay. All right. There. We'll just do it the hard way. All right, spin secrets is created. Woohoo! We'll get that script fixed afterwards. No problem. But for now, this is what we want, right? We want it to be there. We've got our patch strategies merge section, which is where we're actually going to like merge stuff together. The resources section is the stuff that doesn't get merged, but things out of the patch strategies merge can get added to stuff that's in there, which is good because the main file that we needed added to is this Spinnaker service. So now that we've got our secret in place, we should be able to do our install, which should be k apply. In my case, k is just alias for kube control. So I'm going to go ahead and do k apply -k period and see what happens. So my service account looks to be okay. Spin cluster role unchanged, cluster role binding unchanged. My files, patch cube. Ooh, I didn't want that one. That's what I get. All right, so let's do the reverse. Why is it getting that? Spinnaker service. All right, patch Docker Hub, don't really want that. Patch time zone, those are fine, that's fine. Patch features, all that should be fine. So if I want to just check on it, right, I can do kubectl customize. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to output that file. So this is going to do post-merge, and I can see what's in here, right? In my case, I see accounts, I see primary, I see Docker registries, primary account, Spinnaker, my time zone, my version, all the things that I've configured in each individual file, they get merged into one file. And that's where customize is just fantastic for, right? And so if we look and see, everything looks good. Spinnaker GCS account from spin secrets. Okay, spin A. So oh, you know what? That's interesting. Oh, that was dumb. All right, fine. So we're gonna do a little bit of live debugging, but it's fine. So in our case, we're gonna go to the operator channel or directory, right? And here we see we've got a customization file, right? If I come over here and I take a look inside, I'm gonna close there. Let's take a look inside there. So there's a deploy directory in here of operator, cluster, and then deployment, right? And we see operator 1.2 and all this. That must be it, maybe. So if I do k get PO -n Spinnaker operator. Spinnaker operator is up and running. Okay. So that means that looks up and running and fine. It's in cluster mode and everything should be good, but we're not seeing it. So you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to, let's see about spin flavor, or not export, we're going to do set spin flavor, which I believe sets the default to Armory. Yeah, so that's fine. So let's go ahead and do, because it's possible, just possible. Do you want to delete it? Yes, I do. So now we're going to delete the Armory operator. And we may just have to do a bit more testing on the open source one here, because it was working before, but that's all right. You know, this is the thing with open source, right? Everybody's adding stuff, and it's possible something got added there that didn't make it work. It's fine, we work around it. So we're going to wait for operator to start. I think this one should work a bit better. I think if I do new window and I do open recent and Spinnaker customize patches, which is there, and could just be that the script that I want to use has been not working right. So and I'm waiting for that other one to go. I'll just revert and discard the changes, because it's very possible. Could very well be. All right, what's going on here? Let's take a look. We look at our deploy. Do you want to delete it? Good. And then we had problems with the script, and then we're trying to install it, but we can't. But I just updated the script to an older version. So let's see if that fixed my secret problem, which I think it did. Yes, it did. Sure looks like it did. If I come down here, yay, secrets are getting created. Including secret files. Yep, Spinnaker GCS. That's good. Role binding unchanged. Cool. But we still have problems. Something's not working right. Okay, fine. Error when creating context deadline exceeded. Yay. It's all right. That's what happens in live demos, right? Things break. Okay. But so we may have to do this live, but without like actually testing it. But that's fine. You know, we're down to like 20 minutes left. So, okay. So we see one thing, right? If we need a file, okay, we're going to spin file, right? We see that this says encrypted file, Kate's, spin secrets. So everything that's in the secrets directory under files is going to be added as a file to this spin secrets. So the name is spin secrets. And then Spinnaker GCS account is the files, or it's going to pull from the secrets.env file, and each one of these will be turned into a secret. Cool. So anytime we see a file, we're going to do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so we've got our patch GCS, right? And there's our patch and patch cube. And anytime we want to add any kind of additional functionality, no problem. We just add it. We add it from there. So let's see. I'm going to do patch. Why is everything just not going right? Let's see. We could do static MPs. So, okay. So let's say we wanted to do, external auths or something like that, right? If we take a look at our config file that we had before, right? And we start looking at some random things in here, right? At least from our perspective, random. So we're going to come in here and take a look and see, okay, so one thing we had that's kind of important for at least our purposes is we had Cloud SQL proxy, right? We had sidecars. Sidecars are set under deployment environment, sidecars. Okay. So if we come down to the section where we talk about sidecars, we see there is something in here for Spinnaker deployment patch Cloud SQL sidecars. Let's take a look at that little section. So close secrets, Spinnaker deployments, Cloud SQL sidecars, right? We see this is basically the same thing as what we had there. It's almost like the guy who wrote it is right here. Interesting. So we see it's configured to come from Spin Secrets, and all that needs to be there is the Spinnaker Cloud SQL accounts JSON. So let's take a look. Spinnaker Cloud SQL accounts. So cool, that needs to exist. So we're going to take that and put that into the files. Cool, Cloud SQL accounts. And because we ran the cloud, we're basically adding a secret right there. We would need to put in a secret, right? So in my case, I could use it. I could add what that secret is going to be, and I could put that any of the sidecars in here, right? But all I really need to do is come over here and go boop, and I turn this on. You have to make the sound effect. It's required. So we've got Spinnaker deployment, patch, Cloud SQL sidecars. So now if I come back over here and I do the exact same thing that I did before, right, where I do that, customize, and I look, I see now I've got the deployment environment section has sidecars, sidecar for Spin Cloud Driver, sidecar for Spin Front 50. And we see like there's actually two sidecars for Cloud Driver, one for the Cloud SQL proxy to allow us to connect to Cloud SQL. And there's another one in here for this gcloud auth helper, which allows you to use gcloud. So for like Google role authentication inside your kubectl, your kubeconfig files, right? This is what makes Cloud Driver able to use that without like overdoing it. Super, any kind of sidecar that you could possibly want can be added in here, right? These are just examples that you can use. But the idea here is that these are already written. They're already configured to do tons of different features, and implementing them into your deployment is just a matter of saying, looking through the things that you have and saying, oh, I need this configuration to be in here. And then if you organize them by features, right, you can have Spinnaker config, right? And now we're talking about This is the root of that config file, right? That's in here, right? Where we've got providers is at the root of the config. So this whole section here that's under deployment configurations, you just imagine this YAML object as config, right? Now, if we look at something like, you know, the other one that we currently have on here, which is customized, and we've got patch cube, right? And we see patch cube, he's got more than just config, right? He's got Spinnaker config, but he also has service settings. And the service settings can be each of the different microservices that the YAML file will get patch merged into together. So if you have another file that has service settings for Cloud Driver, but it doesn't reference Kubernetes, or even if it does reference Kubernetes, it'll try and patch merge them together and merge the YAML files together so that you have your final one. So in our case, we can see at this point, right, that we've closed the config again. Should not have done that. Keep doing that. Hard not to. All right, so stay there, but just kind of move out of the way a little bit. Cool. So at this point now, we've got, you know, patch SQL sidecars. So we can configure it to talk to our Cloud SQL instance. So if we had that, right, what we could then do is we could say, hey, okay, now that we've got our Cloud SQL, we could say, now we want to connect Cloud Driver and Front 50 and Orca to our instance, right? And so if we look at those patch files that are over there from the Cloud SQL sidecars, they're opening up ports 3306. Cool. So we come back over here to SQL Cloud Driver, right? 3306. So I'm just going to change this to something like localhost, right? Because it's common local, or I could change it to 1.12.7, you know. But and then I'll change this one to localhost, right? But we would need, you know, our MySQL passwords, right? Those would notice it's getting the spin secrets for the regular account for Cloud Driver and for the migration account. But we added those, right? So they're in here, right? So we see we could do the MySQL CD password. We could change that to what it's supposed to be. And the migrate password, change that to what it's supposed to be. And if we change anything either in the files directory or in the secrets.env, which does not get checked into Git, then we would just come back out here and run the deploy again, right? And so in my case, I'm not going to turn those on quite yet because I'd have to get the passwords and get them all, you know, configured up. But I'm perfectly fine doing the patch files, right? Or the Cloud SQL cars, the sidecars, right? So sidecars, right? They would get added. Let's look at some of the other things that we have, some of the other configurations that we have, and how can we translate those over. So we've got, so if I wanted to add this spin cluster account, right, which in our case, actually, when this file, this spin cluster account is the one we're in. So we actually get that for free over here by using this patch cube. It's called something else, but I want it to kind of match because I may have pipelines that already match. So I could just do this and rename it, right? Primary account, spin cluster account. Hey, there it is. Boom. Now it's matched. So if I already had a pipeline that had that configuration, it would exist. All good. And if I wanted to set up permissions in there, I could basically copy the permissions that I have right here. Why not? Right? So let's come in here and I could do that, right? I would have to have permissions actually set up in order to do that, right? So in my case, having the permissions set up is I would need to, let's take a look. What do we have for permissions? So let's take a look down in that section, right? Security, we have API security, certificate, certbot, you know, lots of different configurations and stuff in here. But I do know that I actually configured Cert Manager on here so that it could have, if I come in here and I look at get secrets, and I've got Spingo prod TLS. Yeah, look at that. I do have one, right? Spingo 1, Armory prod TLS. Cool. So I actually have that. My TLS certificates are being created by Cert Manager, and they're being automatically updated and kept up to date. All right, that sounds cool. Let's have that work. So let's see, where if I come up here to expose Cert Manager, well, that's pretty much it. I've got it. So if I come up here to my expose section, so there's static IP. Here we go. Like that. Now it's included. And so if I ran this again, customize, we see a whole bunch of stuff got added, right? Under service settings, we see there's the cloud driver thing that we added. And now we see deck, all the stuff that's been configured for deck, where we've got pod annotations and we've got env, we've got gate and different configurations for the key store and all kinds of stuff. Like we could put all of that information, any of it, into our secrets, right? And in our case of the Cert Manager one, right? We need to change it for our company, whatever we have it for, right? In my case, I can pull it from my other window, right? Where I've got, I'm gonna see if I pull it from here, and I can basically say I'm gonna pull it from Cert Manager, right? I could just, right, it's all the same. Getting from the TLS manager, Cert Manager. Notice the secrets are coming mainly from Cert Manager, and it's being pulled from that Spingo Armory IO prod TLS secret that I have configured in there. Cool. Again, we're kind of, because things are not working exactly how we want them to work right now, but we're powering through, we can kind of see how each individual configuration, because they're already there, we just fill out the data that we need. We can see right here, right? It's just the URL that changed, right? And the secret changed. And yeah, I've got some comments in here. And this reloader annotation, this is because I have reloader installed into the repo, or into this onto this cluster. Now, what reloader does is, it's kind of important, especially if you're going to have Spinnaker's certificates be automatically updated by Cert Manager. You need to know that the secret changed, and so that's the solution right here. Reloader watches for a secret, and it says, oh, that secret changed, so I need to do a rolling update on the pods, right? And you should have more than one pod anyways, so it would not be that much of a problem, right? So if I came in here and looked at, like, you know, our sizing, we basically configured, in this case, we've got one replica, but you would have multiple replicas for each of your services, and you would just put them in here, right? However many ones you want. I would recommend having more than one, at least two, so that especially if you're going to have Cert Manager handle if you're going to have Cert Manager handle the updating of your certs. There's a blog post that's coming from Armory that's going to basically go over in depth how you can do this. But in reality, it's kind of just this. It's this file right here, right? And we've got some interesting stuff going on here. One thing to note is this is actually kind of super powerful about Operator, right? Is the fact that, so in this particular file, this Cert Manager SSL file, right? We see we're starting to get familiar with this Spinnaker config and the config, right? And then we also have service settings in here for deck and for gate, but we have customize in here. And what this says is, hey, after Halyard has created the manifests, right? Because Operator under the hood has Halyard running. So Halyard runs and creates the manifests, but when you have just Halyard, you don't have the ability to manipulate those manifests after Halyard creates them. But Operator gives you that ability. You can manipulate them. In our case, what we're saying is, hey, manipulate deck, the deployment manifest using patch strategy merge, and we're going to follow it all the way down, and we're going to add this environment variable passphrase from this secret, adding the key store password spin secrets, right? So the script will create the secret once we get the script fixed, and then it will pull that and manipulate it after Halyard creates it. Now, for those of you who don't know, Halyard is kind of going to be replaced in the not too distant future, right? With something called Cleat, which basically works very similar to how Operator does, and it just reads a configuration file, right? And the benefit of going with something like Operator right now, even open source Operator, even the Armory Operator, whatever you want to go with, right? The benefit of going with that now is it has this level of abstraction. Like right now, Operator uses Halyard under the hood, but when Cleat becomes something that everyone uses, it just gets replaced under the hood. You're still using Operator, and Cleat will just it'll just change to using Cleat under the hood, and everybody's happy, right? No problems. So that's one of the benefits of going with something like Operator is that you have that ability. And one of the benefits of going with something like this whole patch directory is you can see examples on how you can add each and every one of these little things in here, right? You want to talk to GitHub for authentication. Cool. Let's take a look. Like it's all in here, right? If we look at security and we look at like GitHub authentication, here's where we would add our client ID. Here's where we add our client secret. You know, our token URI, like all these things, everything's completely configurable in each of these little patch files. And then you just use the customization all to turn them on or add them if they don't exist in here. They should exist in here. But if for some reason they don't, just add them. Like the patch files, just adding it. Just make sure and add it under the patch strategies merge, because that's where things get added to the final file that's going to get sent. Right? So the most important things are use each and every one of these little features to like look and see how it's going to manipulate. If I look at something like this, let's say I want a static IP address, which means I'm going to change the service that gets created, and I'm going to change the type to a load balancer, and I want to add the load balancer IP. I can do that right here, right? Here's an example. I'm going to use this expose set to nothing, and I'm going to set this customize gate service patches. And this is going to manipulate that so that the load balancer is going to add these fields on it, right? address that matches, blah, blah, blah. It's all gonna add this. It's gonna manipulate it and add it after Halyard creates it. So that's the real value of Operator. And this is one of the things that, I really wish I would have been able to get things up and running, but that's okay. The main thing is show people that it's really just taking the values out of the config and finding where they match in the different features that are put in here. And if for some reason you've got a feature that doesn't exist, like it's over in your config, but there's no patch over here, it's open source. Add your patch, right? We can have as many as we want in here so that every time we want any particular feature, we just turn it on in here, right? This customization all, and you just boop, turn it on. Turn this one on, turn this one on, or create your own for your own company, right? Whatever you want to do, you just add it and it manipulates the final product, which is one big Kubernetes object. And that Kubernetes object is just a manipulation of Spinnaker service. So I know we've gone over a tiny little bit, I think. I think we're okay. Let's see. All right. I would probably want to respect everyone's time and go ahead and end. We will get the, the different script things figured out and worked out very shortly, probably before this thing becomes available to the general public. But I just wanted to show the mapping of, the different configurations and how those map to the different features inside the operator, and then how that turns into a Spinnaker deployment. And when available, and like in most cases, you can literally just go and find in here, like where usually it talks about, like somewhere at the top, it says, hey, look, see, here's the documentation on Cloud Driver SQL. So we try and keep them matching. Like here's the documentation on Front 50 SQL, and so forth, so that it becomes super useful for someone to get more information about it. So I hope, even with technology not completely cooperating with us, that this has been useful for a lot of people. If you have questions, you can place them in the chat. I don't know how long the chat persists, but yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you very much for watching.